So did anybody else think that half of the shots from the trailer for this film actually looked like covers of metal albums? Because that's a really good way to sell a film like this. So I was seriously excited for this film coming out. It's Hellboy, which I love. It's David Harbour from Stranger Things playing Hellboy, which I also love. And the effects in this film looked really gnarly from the trailers. It all looked brilliant. So what could possibly go wrong? Let's get into it. So Hellboy is a kind of restart from the original Hellboy films that came out in the early 2000s, directed by Guillermo del Toro. This has really nothing to do with those films. We were waiting for Ron Perlman and Guillermo del Toro to come out with a third Hellboy film to kind of complete that franchise. That never came to light, so we've got this Hellboy restart instead. And for the most part, the plot points are still the same. Hellboy gets summoned to Earth in the middle of World War II. He's adopted by the leader of the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, and now he fights monsters so that the magical and the regular world don't ever really collide too much. But ages ago, there was a Blood Queen named Nimue, who is on the verge of returning and wreaking havoc and plagues on mankind, and there's only one person that can stop it. Spoiler alert, it's Hellboy. So the question really is where to start with this film, because as I said, I was really excited about this film coming out. To say that it was a disappointment is maybe putting it a little bit lightly. The problems with this film aren't necessarily the actors or the characters or anything like that. It mainly comes from a storytelling aspect. The people that wrote the script for Hellboy clearly knew what kind of things they wanted to do in a Hellboy film, but had no idea how to tell the story of it or how to thread them together. What this film actually ends up being is almost like 4 different Hellboy stories, all tenuously linked together by convenience of fast travel. And you're not really sure where one Hellboy story finishes and the other one kind of picks up, because they're kind of just messily and sloppily kind of thrown together. At one point he's doing this, and then all of a sudden he has to go and do this, and they're not really connected. I actually have 2 out of the possible 4 different separate Hellboy story arcs that this film is based on. They were lifted directly out of separate Hellboy story arcs. I have them. I can see them down here. And then there's the idea of just doing away with characters after they've been built up through the film to give you the impression of having some sort of significance at the end. And then all of a sudden, when they get to that point, they're just done away with conveniently. There was one bad guy in this film who I started to get invested in the backstory of, because him and Hellboy have beef. And the whole time I was thinking, I kind of want to see where this goes. I want to see where the resolution for this is. And it just ends up in a fight and then conveniently ends with no resolution to it, because hey, we've got to move on now. And there's no real twists to the story either. There's no real sense of this is what something has been building towards, but it's not what we thought it was, because everything like that you kind of get glimpses of in the trailer. And at the end, when you see Hellboy in his kind of full demon form as Anangun Rama, it's not really a surprise, because that is what is all over the promotional marketing materials for this film. So you expect to see that at the end, and it's not really left as any kind of surprise for you. And that's no fault of David Harbour at all. In fact, I would go so far as to say that David Harbour as Hellboy is the single greatest redeeming aspect of this film. What he manages to do is kind of perfectly encapsulate the character of Hellboy. His attitude, his mannerisms. Yes, the prosthetics help, and yes, he looks a little bit more gnarly and demonic and monstrous than Ron Perlman did in the original Hellboys. The first Hellboy, he just looked like Ron Perlman with red makeup on. In this, David Harbour looks like an actual demon. He's got that kind of gnarly facial look about him, and he plays it off really well. And to that extent, the practical effects of this film are really impressive. I really liked what they did when they were using actual makeup effects or actual practical effects. It looked really good. But oh god, the CGI effects in this film. I mean, some of the green screen stuff that happens in this film is PlayStation 2 level of bad by today's standards. When there is bad CGI, and I mean noticeably bad CGI, that makes the film even worse because it just takes you out of the immersion so much. You can't concentrate on what's happening because you're just obsessed with these bad graphics. And it's not that this film wasn't entirely unenjoyable. There were moments in this film where I was like, okay, this is starting to get going. I'm really enjoying this film. It's an R-rated one. It means it's a little bit more violent than the original ones could be. Kind of plays to the strength of what Hellboy is as source material. But then when it just started going off on tangents and became messy in its script and storytelling, it just went downhill after that point. So with that in mind, Hellboy, much to my disappointment, is a 2.5 star film at best. I would like to have given this film more, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And actually, it did gain back a certain amount of credit for the fact that they managed to include Lobster Johnson as a character in this film, which is completely harking back to the original BPRD comics. So, Hellboy, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Would you watch another, hopefully far better film in this Hellboy franchise? And if so, what characters would you like to see included? Or would you rather that Guillermo del Toro and Ron Perlman reunited to finish off their original franchise? All comments are welcome in the comments section below. Let's talk nerdy. As always, if you've enjoyed what you've seen here and you would like to see some more, you can click right here to subscribe and see some more funky fresh videos from yours truly. And until that point, I would like to point out that technically, Hellboy's Right Hand of Doom does a lot more than just smash stuff real good, but you can take that however it's meant.